We often look at diets as what are we not eating or
Ah,
focusing just on calories and not looking at the whole picture. When we look at the anti-inflammatory dietary index, it's actually about adding in all of the nutrients your body needs to optimally function and to optimally thrive. So when you're talking about a diet, I want to remove that I can't eat this, I can't eat that, I can't eat this mindset and switch it over to what am I eating? What am I nourishing my body with? What am I giving my body so that my blood pressure can come down because I'm opening up my arteries and allowing for better blood flow? What am I giving my body that's going to help address underlying inflammation?
welcome back to another episode of All Things Menopausal with my very amazing guest. They're all amazing. I love to say that, but they are because they share so much sage advice and insights onto the menopausal journey and what we can do from our health perspective, nutrition, movement, stress management, and sleep optimization. And this is one conversation with Michelle Routhenstein that you can certainly take to heart. I mean that. This conversation emphasizes the significance of addressing heart health and heart disease. And Michelle, first, I'll share her journey from considering a medical career to specializing in nutrition and women's heart health, driven by her desire to have more preventative care. And how do we do that? Well, we address our cardiometabolic risks and the critical role that nutrition plays in addressing these heart risks. Michelle will also provide her insights into familial hypercholesterolemia, which is a genetic metabolism disorder that leads to high cholesterol levels and can start in a very young age. Michelle will also stress the importance of exercise or movement and how important it plays in improving arterial elasticity and blood flow. She'll discuss the challenges and strategies for incorporating these exercise routines into lifestyle changes for all clients in a way that is a tailored approach for their individual situation, needs, and preferences. And of course, you can't talk about the 4 pillars of good health without addressing sleep and stress management. And Michelle will explore with us the multifaceted impact that both have on our heart health, highlighting the role of oxidative stress in the body's antioxidant restorative system during sleep. It's fascinating. So you're going to want to stick around for that. I'm not giving it away in my intro. And of course, we will talk about dietary changes. And I know that's not a favorite subject, but Michelle emphasizes it's not what to take off your plate, it's what to put on your plate. And she will emphasize the importance of complex carbs, whole fats, as well as the roles that emotions play in maintaining overall well-being, which is also an essential component of a healthy heart. But before we begin, this is what you need to know about Michelle. Michelle has a master's of science. She's a registered dietitian, a certified dietitian nutritionist, and a certified diabetes care and education specialist, and is the owner and president of Entirely Nourished, a specialized private practice focusing on nutrition, counseling for heart health, prevention, and management. She uses a science-based holistic approach and educates individuals on addressing cardiometabolic risk factors for healthy hearts as they age. Michelle is recognized as a thought leader in heart disease management, sharing her expertise on social media platforms like Instagram and LinkedIn, which is in the show notes, and empowers followers to prioritize heart health through nutrition and lifestyle changes. She also serves as a medical advisory member for the National Menopause Foundation and the Forbes Health Advisory Board, and provides evidence-based guidance on heart health. With degrees from New York University and valuable clinical experience, Michelle is dedicated to translating nutrition science into practical, long-term solutions for heart health and longevity. Let's get to the heart of the matter. Hello, my lovely listeners. I have a great, wonderful guest with me here today, and we get to the heart of the matter. No pun intended. And before Michelle and I started, we had a lovely little preamble where we talked about debunking the fear around food and food anxiety. But then also we share our love of talking about menopause and heart health. Michelle Routhenstein, all the way from New York. Thank you for being on our show and welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today.
We're recording this right around the summer solstice season. Of course, we'll air this a little bit later, but I always find it's a great time to do some inward reflection. And that means head to toe, a health check. And we're going to stop at the heart and get into those details. So my first question is to you. How did you land in a career that focuses on women's heart health, and particularly in the menopause years?
Great question. So I was always fascinated by medicine, and I actually started off in the pre-med track at NYU, and it's a track.
Yes.
It's not like a degree of any sort. So I was always in nutrition, and I had this area in my college years where I had to choose, am I going to go into the nutrition route, like a residency in nutrition, or am I going to do a doctor route and become a medical professional? And I was shadowing in the hospitals in New York City. And one thing just struck me, like, we're living in this medical model where we're in there to treat. So medicine is pushed at people with now not really ever addressing the root cause, not really looking at it as a preventative realm. And so from there, I decided to go through nutrition because of the prevention state which we're trying to achieve. That's A. And then B, after that, I was in my residency in clinical nutrition, and we were in different rotations. So kidney clinic, weight loss clinic, liver clinic, ICU, heart clinic, and everyone was having the same issues. And that was cardiovascular disease. And if you really look at the statistics year after year, cardiovascular disease is the number one cause of death and mortality globally. But 80 to 90% of it is preventable. People with kidney disease, the number one cause of death is not kidney disease, it's heart disease. Everything that you look at in women's health in general, most people, if you ask them, they think breast cancer is what's the number one cause of death in women, but it's heart disease. Now tell me, why is that? So I really went into this field being like, there needs to be change. We need to change the statistics because we can. So what's missing? And that's when I really did a lot more research and digging and just being with all these different cardiologists, showing that most people don't know they're at risk. Most people do not realize that they can do something about it. And so until something happens, then people will react versus being more proactive. And so I specialize in specifically women's health. I do see men as well, but with women's heart health, there was a large part of the research where women were not really included. And we know that women, heart disease actually affects women differently than men. In men, most of the time, it's plaque buildup in the main coronary arteries of the heart muscle. In women, it's actually found more in the microvascular and the smaller vessels. So a lot of times it's not really identified. And especially women who don't necessarily look obese or don't look, quote unquote, the part of heart disease, they're often neglected in the healthcare system. And so my real passion is to bring more awareness, especially because during the menopausal transition, the risk of heart disease increases tremendously because of the decline of estrogen. And so we need to be aware, and we need to understand, like, many women will come to me and say, Michelle, I didn't change my diet. But all of a sudden I go through menopause and I have stubborn weight loss and I have high cholesterol and high blood pressure. And we have to recognize that the dietary needs and changes that happen during the menopausal period are unique. And we need to be modifying our food choices during this time period to prevent cardiovascular issues going forward. And so I really spent a lot of time in this research and in this specific niche because I see the importance of it. And so I'm also on the medical advisory committee board of the National Menopause Foundation. And I love being there because I can really talk about this and talk about the differences, because the more awareness people have and the more they understand that they can take ownership and be empowered in their journey to reduce their risk, the more lives we can save, but also the quality of life. The health anxiety gets reduced tremendously so that you can live your life in those retirement years happily, healthy, and with the people that you love. And so I always find that this is the biggest impact group that I really can influence. And I really love it because there's so many new research coming out that really speaks to women specifically in the heart health sphere.
So let's That is fantastic, by the way. And I'm so pleased that this kind of work is being acknowledged by the National Menopause Foundation. Because as you said, heart health in women in particular, it shows up differently. And oftentimes it's ignored when we feel those minor little chest pains. And
Yeah.
often it's, "Well, that's just indigestion, or you've got acid reflux." Um, and of course, and we can unpack that a little bit more because I am quite curious. But how then now, with your contribution to the National Menopause Foundation on the advisory board, how is that shaping the message that's coming out of an organization of this caliber that women are probably paying attention to quite a bit in terms of the leading research on menopause?
Yeah, I think it really highlights the need to be speaking about this topic more on a global scale and really acknowledging that yes, menopause happens in every woman's life. And while many people dismiss it, oh, you have heart palpitations, oh, it's okay, it's just
Mhm.
hormones. But no, there are specific implications that we need to address and that we shouldn't ignore. And so by having this subcategory really puts that emphasis on, hey, let's be aware of it so we're not dismissive, because being dismissive is what can accelerate issues going forward. And I always say, when like we need to be in you and any you versus someone else, we all have individual responses. So while somebody is evaluating you, what you feel and what's different to you is valid. And anyone who doesn't give that validity is not looking at the whole picture. And we need to make sure that we're really honing into those symptoms and addressing them.
So when you had mentioned, of course, it is very individualized in how it shows up. And you mentioned the key ones, such as the stubborn weight loss, for example, or the increase in belly fat. But what are some of the less obvious, more subtle ways that menopause is affecting the body, and in particular showing up in our cardiovascular health?
So estrogen helps to make our arteries less stiff. So they make
Okay.
our arteries more elastic. So when estrogen levels decline, our endothelial health, our blood vessel health takes a beating. So blood pressure can increase. But blood pressure, when it's borderline high, you don't really feel it. You only feel it when maybe you're in a hypertensive crisis, it's very high. And because of this transition, it is so important that we are checking blood pressure at home. And often women will say, oh, yeah, it's high in the doctor's office, but I'm anxious. I have white coat syndrome. And they never check their blood pressure at any other time at home. And so they're walking around with high blood pressure. And when high blood pressure is present, even at borderline high levels like 130 over 80, what ends up happening is our blood vessels can easily get a tear in the artery wall that can cause more plaque to form. It can make our heart have to work harder to pump. So our body compensates, but we don't feel it because our body is such an amazing organ and is trying to do its best to do what it needs to do to operate. And so only until it's been like that for several years or decades does it end up being like a stroke or a heart attack or a cardiovascular complication like heart failure. So it's so important. And one of the biggest takeaways you can do is get a blood pressure cuff and check your blood pressure at home. You really want that number to be 120 over 80 or less, optimally 110 over 70. That really is a good indication of good blood flow. And if you are someone who's always been historically at baseline, like 90 over 60, and now you're 115 over 75, you're going towards a higher normal. And that's something that we need to take into account also, because these ranges are very wide and we have to know what's your normal and where is it trending, because those trends tell us a lot more about you and personalizing it to your vascular system.
So with these are the cardiometabolic risks that you're speaking about then in terms of the decline in estrogen, but what are some of the other cardiometabolic risks factors?
So we talked about the waist circumference. So I always
Mhm.
advise people to check their waist circumference, not their pant size, by taking a soft measuring tape and putting it around your belly button. Don't suck in, don't suck out. Generally, for women, we want that to be less than 35 inches. For some ethnicities, we want it to, like South Asians, we want that to be closer to 33 inches or less. We also want to make sure that you're checking that every year, because if it's trending in the wrong direction, that's a red flag. That's
Okay.
one. The other thing is gut issues. So like acid reflux or
Ah.
motility issues. Like these are signs that you may have inflammation, and we need to address that too. If you're having stubborn weight loss, like all of a sudden you gained 5, 10 pounds, 15 pounds, and you're like, I can't get this off, and I didn't really change anything. Those are signs. Fatigue, loss of energy, frozen shoulder. There's a lot of things that are contributing here that we need to really assess what's going on and what can we do to optimize these factors.
So let's talk about the optimizing these factors. And you mentioned that we need to make some significant dietary changes as we move through the menopausal years. But even prior to that, what are some of the things that women in general should be developing or adopting in their lifestyle or in their nutrition to set them up for success, for a successful menopause year, so they can keep that inflammation at bay, can keep that waist circumference down, blood pressure in a good range?
Yeah. So the big thing is that we often look at diets as what are we not eating, or
Ah,
focusing just on calories and not looking at the whole picture. And when we look at the anti-inflammatory dietary index, it's actually about adding in all of the nutrients your body needs to optimally function and to optimally thrive. So when you're talking about a diet, I want to remove that I can't eat this, I can't eat that, I can't eat this mindset and switch it over to what am I eating? What am I nourishing my body with? What am I giving my body so that my blood pressure can come down because I'm opening up my arteries and allowing for better blood flow? What am I giving my body that's going to help address underlying inflammation? Because there's a lot of pathways in the body that need certain nutrients and certain vitamins like selenium and vitamin A and vitamin C and vitamin E. And if we don't get that through food, then we can also be having more of a pro-inflammatory diet. So many people think, well, if I don't eat processed foods and I don't eat fast foods and I don't eat junk foods, then I'm eating a healthy diet. But most of the time, it's that they're not really including all of the nutrients they need to actually define and have an anti-inflammatory diet. So that's the biggest thing that we really need to be focusing on versus removing all of these things. And especially in this culture where you go on the internet and everyone's like, don't eat this, it's processed. Don't eat this, it's going to kill you. And it's whoa, we're living in a very fear-mongering society, and we need to remove that because a big part of it also is we need to adapt a lifestyle and a diet that's going to be long-term. And if you're focusing on what you can eat and being fear monged, you're going to increase health anxiety. And then at one point, you just give up. You'll put up your hands and go, I can't do this anymore. Versus if you actually understand the why, what are you eating, in what balance, in what quantity that's going to nourish your body, make you satiated, help with weight loss, help with inflammation, help with blood vessel health, help with optimizing cardiovascular health and function. That's really where we're going to see the best results.
I love that. Understand the why. And this is exactly what I'm trying to preach in my role as a menopause doula, is that let's get you empowered with the knowledge so you can make those informed decisions. And I love to put my clients in the direction or in contact with people such as yourself, Michelle, who can really get them to understand the basic principles and then feel empowered about it rather than being preached to. And I love the fact that you say, let's not worry about what to eliminate, but let's look at what we can add in for a more plentiful, nutritious diet that is going to provide us with the vitamins through our food, of course, that we need to optimize our health. So tell us about the work you do then with your clients to get them to that lifestyle and nutrition changes that they need to optimize their health.
Yeah. So the thing is, when we look at personalized nutrition, the reason why personalized helps is because everyone has food preferences. Everyone has food culture. Everyone has different lifestyles, different work styles, different cooking abilities. Before COVID, I worked only in the city. I had an office in the city, and cardiologists were for their clients to me. And 9 out of 10 put their shoes in their oven. They never cooked one meal. And so for me to tell them you have to cook every single meal, that's not going to work for them. So there needs to be a personalization factor. There's other clients of mine who they have a big family and they don't want to cook one meal separate from everyone else, and they shouldn't. I don't support being a short order cook. So you have to really meet people where they are and really also assess what do we need to prioritize, right? So if someone comes to me because they have stubborn weight loss and I look at their lab report and I look at their medical history and there's a lot of signs that they have insulin resistance, that's what we're going to prioritize first. So it's about prioritizing what we need to do to first in order for the other things to fall in place. A big thing that we need to also recognize that we often forget about is our body's needs. So we live in this very fast-paced culture where no one really is being mindful to, am I hungry? Am I satiated? It's, oh, I always eat, always skip breakfast, or I always eat at 9, 12, and 7, or they don't really go into, well, am I hungry? What is my body saying? So it's really important to really go to that aspect of hunger scale on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being that you are famished, you're so hungry, and 10 being you overate. You really want to be between a 4 and a 6. When you're slightly hungry, you eat, and then you stop when you're a 6, when you're slightly satisfied. And this understanding of the principles of metabolic rate and how what your body needs are super important here too. So I talk a lot about this mindful strategy. I talk about what foods we need to add to the diet, but really personalized to make sure this is a long-term game. A lot of times I'll ask, can you do this in 6 months? And if the answer is no, we pivot. If you can't do something if you feel that you can't do this in the future, there's no point in just doing it temporarily. For heart health, if you get your labs to be optimal in 3 months, but then they go off the charts the following year, you're not doing any benefit. You need to be looking at this from a long-term lifestyle plan. And so making sure it's sustainable is key. And also making sure that you're not doing a million things at once. People are like, oh, well, I want to lose 20 pounds. And I'm like, we need to go slow and steady. 0.5 to 1.5 pounds per week is important. So you don't have scarring of the liver, it's sustainable, and you don't lose muscle. And a lot of times people want to have lost the 20 pounds yesterday, but it's really important to do this in 1 to 2, 3 habits per 1 to 2 week time period to make them long-term habits, because that's how you brain activity and make this a long-term game. So I work with individuals to personalize that so that they're really honing in, not being overwhelmed, being empowered, but also understanding why and understanding, hey, where are we starting from? But also being an advocate for yourself. If you don't have a medical background, it's hard to know, what tests do I need? It's hard to know what questions to ask. It's hard to know a lot of these things that are so important for you to know to be your own advocate. A lot of times we wait for the doctor to call us to say our cholesterol is high. I don't think most people know. The doctor calls you when your cholesterol is so high it needs a statin. They don't call you when your cholesterol is borderline and you can do dietary changes. They wait until that cholesterol maybe is 140, which is very high. Same with blood pressure. The doctor might say, oh, you're a little nervous, we'll monitor it. Well, if you come back in a year and you've never monitored it, and now you've been walking around with high blood pressure, you're in trouble. Instead of waiting for us to be monitoring it, we should be taking it at home. We should be implementing nutrition. We should be getting a copy of our labs, comparing it from year to year, and being proactive, because that's the only way to truly reduce heart disease. You have to understand this aspect of your health, and you have to be a part of a healthcare team who's willing to give you that time and attention to explain it.
Yes, so good. I I love all of those key elements you said. Setting goals, well, smart goals, if this can be achievable or not. But it's that shared decision making throughout that is the theme here, is that you sit down and you don't dictate an authoritative figure, you must, that they are very much a part of the journey of making those informed decisions so that they can, like you said, be their own advocate and proactively take a role in their health instead of waiting for the shoe to drop. Oh, there's the sign that I need to make a significant change. And sadly, I grew up with 2 parents who lived that way and didn't realize that their food consumption and what they chose to eat and the overprocessed foods and then the after work drinks and the smoking would actually come to bear, and they would have heart issues that was almost at a point where it was too late. And I made it my mission that I wanted to help women take control of their bodies so that they can have an empowered life and live well beyond the midlife years. But
Yes.
there were two things that you had mentioned that I want to just touch on because they were quite curious to me. One was the liver scarring, when it went back to reference when a person comes in, they want to lose weight and they want to lose it quickly. So what does liver scarring mean in terms of their weight loss approach?
So when you are doing things in extreme and you're depriving
Mm-hmm.
your body of all the calories and nutrients it needs, it's a heavy task on your body.
Okay.
So it can cause fatty liver and scarring and cirrhosis happen a lot of times when it's very fast weight loss. That can actually increase the risk of fatty liver disease. And so we don't want fast, we want slow and steady in order to avoid that scarring and that impact on the liver.
And then statins. We hear it all the time. I think it's a pharmaceutical's favorite, right? Put you on statins as soon as we have any indication that there's something going wrong. My husband, being one of those people, he's healthy as can be, but cholesterol was just creeping up. Again, he's at that age where this is going to happen. And he told his doctor, no, I'm not going to go on them. I'm going to work with my wife and we're going to have a nice balanced diet, nutrition. I'm going to make some smart food choice changes and get a little bit more cardio exercise in, as well as weight bearing exercise. We'll get into that as well. But statins, let's talk about that and maybe debunk some mistruths about them. And if it's be all end all for our health. So what can we do to avoid the inevitable? And again, advocate for our own health when we feel that's probably not necessary.
So it really depends on the person. There are a
Okay.
subgroup of individuals who have a condition called familial hypercholesterolemia. And this is a genetic metabolism disorder of lipids. So your body can't break down the LDL cholesterol. And so from a young age, even as young as 7, 8, your cholesterol levels are sky high. So it's usually diagnosed when LDL is above 190 milligrams per deciliter. And it's usually seen as a younger person. It's not everyone, it's a small percentage of our population. But if in those individuals, our medical guidelines are you need a pair nutrition alongside statins. And so I look at it as an adjunct therapy, and I don't shame anyone who needs to go on statins. I think that it can be really a life-saving drug. There are many people who don't need statins because they can lower their LDL cholesterol, their ApoB levels, their non-HDL cholesterol with nutrition alone. And so I always say start with diet and nutrition, but really focus in on the specific foods you need to add to your diet to optimize them. A lot of times when people are hesitant for a statin, but they've had high cholesterol for many years, you may want to consider getting a coronary artery calcium score to assess for advanced plaque formation in the arteries. If that is there, it's usually an adjunct therapy. Now, there are with nutrition. So you can be on a statin and still have a heart attack. I've seen many people who've been on a statin for 15, 20 years still have a heart attack because lipids are not the only component of heart disease. Blood pressure, diabetes, blood sugar, inflammation, there's oxidative stress, endothelial dysfunction. There's a lot of things that increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. So just to look at cholesterol by itself is not looking at the whole picture of things. But some people tolerate statins, they're doing fine with it, and it's okay for them. I'm not against statins. And I think anyone who says no one should ever go on statins is not looking at the science-based evidence. But there are people who don't need the statin. I've helped many people get off of statins. I work with people who are statin intolerant, who cannot, when they have statins, their liver enzymes go up, they have mental health issues, they have their blood sugars go up, they have muscle myalgia, they have muscle aches. And in those individuals, we need to find alternatives to help them if statins is medically recommended. But I don't think there's anything wrong with going on a statin if that's what works for you and that's what's needed in your medical plan. But I
Okay.
always encourage if you're on a statin, you should also pair nutrition. A lot of times, if you've had a cardiovascular event, the doctor wants you on a statin and you pair nutrition, you can usually go on the lowest dose. So, like a 5 milligram dose of a statin, where the side effects are really limited. There's no real side effects at that low of a dose. And so you're still getting both types of benefits from a research standpoint.
So to recap, then, they're not necessarily bad, can be very helpful. But if you're on them, obviously, like you said, pair it with good nutrition. So you're still being proactive and preventative. But you can get off them with improved nutrition and lifestyle.
Yep, you can. It just depends on your risk factors. So when we look
Okay.
at ranges, if you are someone who has a high lipoprotein A, which is a genetic risk factor for atherosclerosis, we want LDL to be less than 70. If you have a high calcium score, we want that to be less than 50. And so depending on where you start and depending on your risk factors, but we need to look at the whole picture
Okay.
because it's important that we also need to look at your metabolism of LDL excretion. Some people I've seen with diet alone lower their LDL in 6 months by 60 to 90 points. And I've seen other people where it's a little more stubborn. And so we have to also realize there's an individual makeup here that we need to
Right.
recognize and we need to monitor to make sure that we're still targeting LDL with whichever path is right for you.
Okay. But pairing it then with nutrition with lifestyle changes, such as the exercise, is probably just as important. And I want to touch on that next.
Yeah.
So, when you work with your clients and in the field that you do on the advisory committees, do you get into the aspects of exercise and making recommendations to clients, and on the advisory board that exercise also plays a critical role, even though nutrition seems to be first and foremost the key?
100%. So we
Okay.
look at everything, right? So nutrition is influenced by physical activity, influenced by sleep, influenced by
Yeah,
stress. There's all these things. You can't look at your lifestyle in silos. Everything is
exactly.
correlated. So definitely. I think a big part of it though, and I like to really bring this up, is that many people think that if they are really active, then they don't eat processed foods or fast foods, then they are free of heart disease. And heart
Right.
disease can happen in any shape and size. I've seen many athletes have heart attacks from that plaque buildup because they aren't pairing nutrition with exercise. So if you're doing a lot of exercise, but you're not adding in nutrition afterwards for proper fuel and recovery, that can actually lead to oxidative stress, which increases plaque formation in the arteries. So it needs to be balanced appropriately for you. But exercise is very important, a big piece of it, and all types of exercise. So I look at exercise in three buckets. We have aerobic exercise, we have resistance exercise, and then we have stretching. And everyone looks at stretching as not really a category. It's its own category, especially during menopause when our arteries are more stiff. When we stretch, our arteries are more elastic. It allows for better blood flow. So super important to also prioritize in those three types of exercise.
Oh my goodness. I When you say that, I think of so many of the runners in my running club I used to run with, and we're talking almost 30 years ago now, if not more. I'm dating myself. But we were all like long distance runners. We would be training for the marathons, half marathons, 15Ks. And our mindset, or at least with these older gentlemen who I ran with, and they were probably 20 years my senior, the mindset was, we don't have time to stretch. Stretching is for sissies. Let's just run and run ourselves ragged. We'll just keep clocking extra miles so we can sit down and have a couple of pints of beer or those donuts at the end of the run. They're like, oh my gosh. I gave into it, I don't know, maybe for a couple of months. And after that, I said, no, I just feel like so crappy. I've put in the work to get this nice run in. I'm feeling super strong. Why would I blow it on one donut after the run? And so it's so true what you say about the three. I love that you broke it down into three areas. I love to teach bar classes. And one of the things that we always say when we do the stretching portion after the resistance training or the weight bearing work is It takes strength to stretch. And I think that is more than just a physical strength, but a mental strength
Oh,
to
yeah.
stretch, because when we stretch, we really feel where the body is holding on to extra emotions or extra resistance or extra pain. We haven't worked something out. There's some inflammation maybe hitting, especially in the hips for women.
Yeah.
So when you have your clients come to see you and say, oh, Michelle, oh my gosh, I've made all these changes to my diet. I'm feeling good. I'm exercising. But what do you tell them when they're ready to start incorporating a better workout or a better activity into their lifestyle, better movement to help them get past those hurdles that sometimes exercise just might say, okay, X-nay, I'm stopping there. I'll do the food changes, but I'm not sure about the exercise.
So it really is meeting each client where they are. So there's some
Okay.
clients who come to and they are working out for 2 hours in a day every day. And they're like, I don't have time to worry about nutrition because I'm exercising for so long. We need a balance, right? So that is actually reducing their exercise time to allow for more quality of life and improvement. Other people hate the gym. If you hate the gym, you should never buy a gym membership. I want to know what you like to do. I want to know what brings you joy. If you like going for a walk in nature, you can make that a little bit more brisker over time. But first, we need to anchor it in. Where in your day, maybe it's after your biggest meal, can you walk for 5, 10 minutes? If you're very sedentary, we look at small things to change. If you are already walking, but you don't do any resistance, maybe you get the hand, the wrist, or the ankle kind of weights that you can attach and you can walk with them to help build resistance exercise within your regimen. So I'm very big about anchoring activity, but understanding where do you start? Because everyone starts differently. Some people love exercise and they just never paid attention to nutrition. Other people want are into nutrition but don't really love exercising. So finding where that balance is and making sure that it's anchored and it's something you enjoy doing, because if you don't enjoy doing it, it's not going to be long term, and then it's not really fruitful or helpful for your cardiovascular health or your overall health. And as women, especially in the postmenopausal phase, our bone mineral density gets depleted so quickly, and we have to look at functional medicine and functional motility. And so we need to be looking at muscle mass and preventing osteoporosis, which is a risk factor for heart disease. And so we have to be including it, but that inclusion will differ from you to someone else based off your likes, your interests, what's available to you, what's accessible to you, and what works within your schedule and your time frame. And that's so important when we talk about any lifestyle change, because if you just copy what your friend is doing, but you hate doing it, it's not long lasting and it's not enjoyable or improving your quality of life. We really need to look at all of these factors to build a plan that works for you long term.
So good. So good. Everything I preach and more, but you're just validating it. That's why the experts come on my show, to reinforce what I keep saying. We've
Love it.
talked about obviously the nutrition part, and we've talked about an active lifestyle, but you've mentioned a couple of times now oxidative stress. And of course, we can improve that or reduce it, if you will, with our food choices. Lots of great anti-inflammatory foods to help tackle those free radicals. But the role of sleep and stress management, let's talk about that a little bit and its importance on our heart health.
Yeah, definitely. So when we're awake, our brain is firing neurons. It's in a very oxidative state just by being a human, right? When we sleep, we have an antioxidant restorative system. That's where our antioxidant defense system gets actually brought to life. So if you're sleep deprived, your oxidative stress is so much higher. If you have sleep apnea, so if you're snoring or really tired during the day, or you're waking up a lot at night and you're diagnosed with sleep apnea, that's one of the highest risk factors for oxidative stress, because your body is searching for oxygen in the middle of the night and it can't. And it can't get it. So that's going to increase blood pressure because your body is going to constrict the arteries to give your brain as much oxygen as it possibly can. So sleep is so important because it helps with the antioxidant defense system, but it also restores our functioning, and it also helps with blood pressure control, satiety, and appetite hormones. It helps with cortisol levels. A lot of times, if you don't sleep well, you may be craving some high carbs the next day, or your body can't tell you when it's hungry or full. So it's going to also impact your nutrition. Now, I know though that many times women will say to me, I go to bed just fine, but at 2 or 3 a.m., I wake up and I can't go back to sleep. That's a very big complaint during the menopausal period. And a lot of times when I assess what's going on, it actually has to do with a couple of factors. One, it could be stress. So the stress, their mind is still on. And so once you wake up, it's on, it's not going back to sleep, you're fired. But there's also certain nutrients like magnesium and B vitamins that are needed for melatonin to be naturally produced in the body. So if you don't have those in sufficient quantities, after your body's so tired, it sleeps, and then it wakes you up because you don't have the appropriate nutrients to keep you asleep. So I'm very big on nutrient sufficiency because it really helps to address a lot of the menopause symptoms that occur, because our nutrients actually change during the menopausal period of how much we need of certain things. And I think that this is something that no one really talks about. It's like, well, I eat healthy. Why is all these things happen? Oh, it's just estrogen. Yes, it's estrogen declining, but it's also your body's needs are changing, and we need to be more adaptable to what those needs are to prevent these things from causing issues.
So good. You've said this a few times, and it's worth reiterating. As we age and through the menopausal years, our nutrition needs change. That is so key. And I've been dealing with clients who just feel that, and we all agree, the estrogen, of course, egress from the body has a cascading effect. The receptors in the body are not receiving the estrogen signals to optimize its function, and it's going to adjust. The body is a very wise machine, and it can adjust, but we overlook often those supplements, the nutrients that we need, as you mentioned, the vitamin D, vitamin B, and magnesium. So I want to put it out there for the listeners. If I were to say, if we had to, and this is probably a difficult question, but the 5 top supplements, whether we get it in our food or as a supplement, what would be the 5 top that we need to optimize in our body to help with our menopause transition?
So I would just put a caution. When I say the minerals, it's not a supplement. It's actually through food, because anybody who tells you that everyone needs to be on the top 5 supplements is not really doing justice, because it can change based off the medications you take, your medical history, your diet. Supplements are intended to supplement your diet because let's say you avoid certain foods or you're allergic to certain foods, then we can supplement the diet through a supplement, but that needs to be personalized and discussed with your personalized care team, including your registered dietitian. I wouldn't really say, oh, everyone needs the same supplements. But with that in mind, we need to make sure that you're getting enough calcium, vitamin D, magnesium, potassium. We also want to make sure that you're getting enough selenium. We want to make sure that there's so many nutrients. We want to make sure that you're getting enough of manganese and folate. While those nutrients may be only talked about during the pregnancy years, they actually are super important for the endothelial health, for your arteries to vasodilate and open up and allow for good vascular health. So it's not about, hey, everyone needs to go on these vitamins. All these vitamins are important. I can list you a million more. Vitamin C is important. All of these, glutathione is important. Quercetin is important. Flavanols are important. But we can get this all through our food. And when we get it through our food, our body knows what to do with it. It's in a whole food matrix that allows for absorption of these nutrients in the best way. Omega-3 fatty acids. Also, if we get it through food, that's much more safer than if we get it through a supplement, because we've seen new research that shows that a lot of them go rancid. And so now you're having oxidized supplements in your system, which can lead to more oxidative stress and increase LDL cholesterol. So I'm very big about, if you can get it through food, that's my preferable way. But if you're vegan or You're going to have to supplement with a lot of supplements because you can't get that through non-animal foods like zinc and B12 and omega-3s. So we have to really personalize the supplements to you. More is not better. And I often see this, well, oh, I'm taking all these things and they're advertised to be heart healthy. It's not very well regulated. They can really stick a lot of false claims, and they just put a little bit of a tag there saying this has not been evaluated by the FDA. And so that kind of takes away their liability. So we need to be really mindful of what we're putting in our body and really focusing on the nutrients through the food, which is so abundant in our food supply. And then supplementing is needed. I do recommend supplements to my clients, but on a personalized level based off of their medications, their diet, their lifestyle, and what they really need.
Yes, and working with their healthcare team, like you said. Fantastic. That is such valuable information alone. And we're hearing this more and more is get the nutrients and supplements through the food source first and foremost, which means eating a more plentiful diet that is rich in those vitamins and supplements that will enable us to absorb them into the body effectively. And that, of course, would be our colorful vegetables, as we say, all the colors of the rainbow, and eating our proteins.
Exactly. Our proteins.
Yeah.
Also our complex carbs that have been getting a bad rep recently, and our health fats, they all matter. They're all essential macronutrients that we need in our body.
So good. So good. We're going to have so many gems of information in the show notes. But before we get there, I want to ask you what book you're reading and what does that tell us about you, or a recommendation that you could make for our listeners about what you're reading.
I'm reading, so I got gifted recently a book called Just One Heart by Dr. Jonathan Fisher. He's one of the kindest cardiologists I've had the pleasure to know. And he wrote this book about the emotional side of heart health and how while he acknowledges we need to prioritize balanced nutrition, we need to prioritize sleep, we need to prioritize all the other aspects of healthy living, the emotional component is so vital. And what's so beautiful about how he writes is that it's not just the negative emotions that we want to reduce, it's about the positive emotions of gratitude and joy and just good resilience and emotional health, which we really need. And and I love it because all of my clients come to me, most of them with a lot of health anxiety. And we don't really take into the fact of this anxiety and emotional well-being enough. And I spend a lot of time building confidence with my clients by explaining the why behind my recommendations so that they're an empowered person on their team. They're active in their team to understand, okay, this guy fear-monged me, but he's wrong because I know that this does this and this in my body. And so they stay on track longer. And so that's my way of dealing with a lot of health anxiety around food, but just emotional health and social connections and all of that is such an important piece of this. And he really describes this beautifully in his book. And so I'm enjoying it. He's gifted it to me, and I'm going to be talking to him about it on my Instagram page once I finish reading it.
Nice. And speaking about your Instagram page, tell our listeners where they can find you, Michelle.
Yeah, so you can find me on my website at entirelynourished.com. I'm also on Instagram at heart.health.nutritionist. I'm also on Facebook at Entirely Nourished, and I'm also on LinkedIn at Michelle Routhenstein. But just join my email list because that's where you'll get all of the information anyway. And that will really help you just get heart disease prevention tips in your inbox.
Beautiful. We're going to get those great links in our show notes so our listeners can join, sign up, and start getting to know themselves inside and out, starting with the heart and really being proactive in the decision-making about their lifestyle changes. Michelle, I can't thank you enough for reaching out and being on the show. Just packed full, so many great gems of information. I don't know, so many great clips that you said. I don't know which one I'm going to pull out for your opening clip, but so good. I'm so thrilled to share this information. It's been wonderful having you here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to another insightful episode of All Things Menopausal. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay connected, be sure to follow me on Instagram for daily tips and updates. For even more support and community, join our Facebook group, Personal and Universal, where we share experiences, advice, and empower each other through the transformative journey. And if you found value in today's episode, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. Your feedback helps reach more women who can benefit from these conversations. Okay, my lovelies, until next time, stay empowered, stay informed. Remember, midlife should be the best life, and it will be. Namaste.